that would be my suggestion to the maker of the motion. As noted in the orders, we're going to adjourn this meeting in memory of Gus Constantine Lease. And we are honored to be joined by his wife, Lois, and by Dr. Jeffrey Lease, who serves our community in many ways. And Councilmember Rocha will tell us more.
Well, thank you. I'd like to invite Jeff up to speak. You know, I've always felt that it means a lot more coming from a family member than an elected official up here talking about your loved ones. So if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium and saying a word or two about your father, please. And thank you for joining us.
I think when my father was here just less than a year ago, I think he turned this around. I think he went that way because he needed to sing to all of you, but I'll speak this way. Thank you. Thank you, Don. You know, I really value the 30-plus years of friendship that we've had. I thank the council for honoring my father in this way. Again, it was just less than a year ago he was here singing to us, and you know, he had a divine gift of voice that he cultivated throughout his life, and he shared that freely all over the world. When he was 15, he went to New York and was chosen, but to be in a Broadway play called, was it My Pal Joey? Is that it? Pal Joey, yes. And anyways, his mom said, no, you come home and get your education, then you can go be famous. But out of 500 baritones, he was chosen at that time. He was born of an immigrant family in Sioux City, Iowa, a Russian family. Didn't have a lot of money. And he came to San Jose in 1950 to teach at San Jose State University. And that's where he continued to teach for 66 years. Wow. Yes, until he was teaching until this past spring with 70 students in his class in May. And I believe that the hardest call that I saw him make in August before he passed was the call to the chairman saying, I can't come teach the students, because he had 70 kids registered for his class in the fall, and he was going to be there for them, you know. He loves San Jose State. He loves San Jose. He loves San Jose State. He said it's the oldest public institution of higher education in California and the best. The best. He called it the best. He told me as a kid, get your education, Jeff, because it's the one thing in life no one can ever take away from you. Never can they take away what you learn and what you get in your mind. And I don't see the little students up here, but that was one of the best Pledge of Allegiance I've heard in a long time. So really found the happy for me today. Many of you may not know he had a show called The Gus Lease Show. He was once called the Bob Hope of Northern California. And my mother was in that show, and they spent quite a number of years traveling overseas and entertaining the military. And it was quite popular. In fact, he liked to tell me of the 2-page spread that he had one time, and Bob Hope only had a half page in that particular paper. He was an advocate for education, very actively involved in CTA and CFA and NEA and CSEA, the state employees, and he would often drive to Salinas one night for a meeting and then drive back up to Sacramento or down in the same day to Salinas and back to Sacramento one day to be at these meetings and to represent. And he just loved to be on the go, even to the last few weeks. But, you know, his greatest role was as a father, I think, to me. That's where it always gets me. You know, he would go without to make sure that we had. He was very frugal. He would eat cereal with water in it to save a few pennies so that we could have what we needed for our education. Always there for the family. Always supported my endeavors, whether it was in business or chiropractic, and even in my election. In 2010 and 14, you'd find him out there with a cane and a lawn sign, walking up to some random door on an ideal street corner saying, this is the place, and he'd go and he'd knock on the door and he'd say, I'm Gus Lease from San Jose State. Would you put this up for my son? I don't think anybody ever said no to that. He was, I can't say enough wonderful things about him as a role model, as a mentor, as an inspiration to me, and as a rock in my life. Towards the end of his life, I think the greatest wisdom he shared with me was, be happy. He kept talking about this, be happy. And I've coined this quote every single day. I now say to myself, Jeff, find the happy. You know, we have lots of things that go on, lots of challenges in city council that come to us, lots of things that go on in our life, but there's always a sliver of happy somewhere. And if you could just find that happy, that sliver of happy, I think it makes the day better. Those kids, when they said the pledge, I found that happy right there. There's always a happy, and if you focus on that, everything else will I think, fall into place. So remember that, find the happy. And, I want to thank you all for adjourning this meeting in his memory. I really appreciate it. It's quite an honor. And, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could say just one thing.
Please.
I had a number of talking points that I put together in case Jeff wasn't able to continue and maybe got emotional. And there was one that you just touched on that I want to reinforce and share with you here, which is Gus, to me, was one of a kind. As you mentioned, you and I met in high school, and we probably weren't the best behaved teenagers, but that didn't mean a darn thing to him. And he was so supportive of you. And then also, as we've grown older, supportive of me. And I couldn't thank him enough for that. But for me, he was one of the kindest and warmest people I've ever met. He was always smiling, and every time I met him or ran into him or talked to him, I left that interaction with him feeling better and happier than before that moment. That was the bullet here that you just touched on, and I think anybody who has interacted with Gus felt the same way, and thank you for being here, and our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And certainly Gus was a legend here in San Jose, and I know he's proud looking down today. Thank you for the words. Okay, on orders of the day.
Motion to approve orders of the day with a deferral on